Welcome to the 73rd episode of the New Ventures podcast. I am your host, Sanjoy Sanyal, the founder of Regain Paradise, a boutique climate finance firm and a visiting fellow at the Cambridge Judge Business School. Along with my co-host, Professor Jaideep Prabhu, we try and understand the links between climate change and food security in these series of conversations.
Hi, my name is Jaideep Prabhu. I am a professor of marketing at Cambridge Judge Business School. My area of interest is innovation, in particular frugal innovation, how to do more and better with less. And that interest in innovation has led to an interest in food, and particularly food security and climate-related issues. I'm delighted to be doing this podcast with Sanjoy.
Our guest for today is Melody Melloreich, the project manager of sustainable consumption and production in WWF Philippines.
Hi everyone.
Welcome, Melody. Could you start by telling us a little bit about yourself for our audience?
Sure, definitely. I'm so happy to be here. Hi everyone, I'm Melody Melloreich, but you can call me Mel. I've been a project manager for WWF for the past 7 years, going on 8 now, handling various projects for food and mostly on sustainable consumption and production. Basically, I'm a nutrition major and my family is into the food business. Hence, I would say that food is really in my DNA.
And how did you get interested in the whole environmental and climate area?
Yeah, actually, I had a series of search in terms of my work, my professional career. I have worked with various organizations like academic institutions, corporate. I've also done government work. But I guess I would say WWF's calling during the time in 2017 sparked an interest in me. And I actually found myself mirroring the terms of reference and saying that what they're looking for is me. I sort of manifested it and I became very interested with the work. And now, 7 years later, I'm still here. I'm still working for WWF.
Great to find your calling, Melody. Did you join WWF as the Sustainable Consumption Production Manager and then immediately start your work on tuna, which is what we're going to talk about today?
No, actually for that project, the SCP project that is centered on tourism and hospitality industry, which ran for 4.5 years. So that is my very first project. And it was the first project in the Philippines that centered on that industry, the tourism and hospitality industry. We are basically integrating and promoting SCP principles in the industry with the government and definitely with the consumers that would make better decisions when it comes to their food choices, their travel ideas, and everything else in between.
Well, we are going to talk tuna.
Yes.
But before we do that, I must say to our audience that the Philippines is a great place to have a holiday in. The previous tourism tagline used to be, it's more fun in the Philippines. So I think if you're planning your vacation, you should also contact Melody. But we shall move on. Your project is on the sustainable tuna production. Philippines is one of the largest producers of tuna in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Help us understand the importance of small-scale fishers in this industry.
Wow. Apart from tuna being the major export seafood of the Philippines, the small-scale fisheries in the Philippines is immense. So it's around 2 million active fisher folks, or around 80% of the fisheries are small-scale fishers, fish farmers, fish workers, and their contribution to nutrition and food security here in the Philippines and even outside of our country is really immense. It's just sad that they are not noticed or they are basically underappreciated, but a big chunk of the fishery sector is really small scale, or what we call artisanal fisheries. When we talk about artisanal fisheries, it's really very small scale, subsistence, and the fishing gear that they use does not require boat or The boat that they use is actually below three gross tons. So that's how we define artisanal fisheries here in the Philippines.
Do they produce fish for themselves and their own consumption, or do they also produce and sell?
Both, but majority of their main drive to fish is really for selling. So they are actually very expensive in such a way that they are using a highly selective fishing gear, which is a hand line, wherein a fisher would use a single hook and lodge it around 50 to 150 meters in depth. Then basically they have less bycatch of other species and the juvenile tuna, making it more sustainable and more friendly to the environment because of that, compared to the long lines and the nets that would produce more bycatch.
Melody, I wonder if you could take us to the project site of Occidental Mindoro. Can you tell us about the community there and whether the local fishers have institutional support?
Yes. So Mindoro Strait, or basically Occidental Mindoro, where it's considered as the 7th largest island in the Philippines, it actually is a corridor. It's a link between the West Philippine Sea, between the Verde Island Passage, which is considered the center of marine biodiversity, and the Sulu Sea. So these three bodies of water are very productive, and it's considered as pathways for yellowfin tuna. Covers around 9,000 square kilometers, and for this project, we are covering around 28 villages, covering 6 municipalities in the west coast of the province. Basically, the province is highly agricultural and coastal at the same time, and it's considered as one of the food baskets of the country. So safe to say, the communities there are mostly into farming, into fishing. So those are the two main industries that we have there.
A little bit about their livelihoods. How secure or precarious are they? What's the kind of infrastructure that supports them? Those kinds of things.
For fisheries, they also have an agricultural office for the municipalities. Because of the nature of the province, majority of the municipalities have this office. Then they also have management councils for fisheries, which basically is the law and policy making body for fisheries in each municipality. So safe to say, from 2011, since we started our work there, a lot has improved because of the interventions of WWF in the area, together with Lagunoy Gulf, which is in the Bicol region.
Melody, you talked about elephant tuna. Is that the only species that is available in this area? And is that the only species that is fished?
No. Our fishing area is actually rich in different species of fish. But if you're talking about tuna, we can get their yellowfin tuna, we can get their skipjack tuna, and we can also get big eye tuna. But for the export quality, it's mostly yellowfin that is being exported to the EU, to the US, and even Australia and Japan.
So from what you are describing, it does seem that the fishing people here have institutional support. There is a structure, and from what I understand, is only improved after WWF has ended. But obviously, from what I know, climate change is having its effect in these areas, right?
Yes, definitely, Sanjoy. And even if I have described the fishing ground as very luscious, diverse, I can still say that the small-scale fishers and the fish workers are still the poorest and the most socially vulnerable sectors. So you can see that fishing is actually a high-risk work and a high-risk investment, That's why a lot of fishers have a lot of credits with their buyers, with the local traders. So you can still see the large income gap between these two. And one of the reasons why they have this higher risk in terms of return of investment would be overfishing and the changing ocean temperatures. So it alters really the fishing landscape in Mindoro Strait. And before, they won't venture far enough, but now they will be venturing as far as 40 kilometers and spend a week there just to earn and just to get fish. That's how bad it is.
And what about cyclones and high seas?
Oh, well, for the Philippines, we get 24 to 30 typhoons every year. So fishers really bear the brunt of the typhoons, the cyclones, and even the monsoon seasons that hit the Philippines. It wipes out their boats, it wipes out their gears, and eventually it wipes out their livelihoods. And that's a sad thing for our fisher folks here.
That's really very sad, Mel, as you
Mhm.
said. But how much of these shocks can be attributed to just human bad practice as opposed to actual climate change?
Well, I would say the people there are really also responsible for the management and sustainable use of the aquatic resources that they have. From what I see, still, fishers are not really that educated yet on properly protecting their coastal communities. In fact, there's a study already that says that only 15% of our coastal communities are ecologically intact. So I would say that for Mindoro, there is also that problem. So it's not just about climate change. It's also high migration of people from other places going to Mindoro, even fishing from other provinces going to Mindoro Strait. So yes, I would say it's both really climate change and anthropogenic activities of humans that makes it worse.
That's an important point, Melody, that you talked about the combination of these two effects. One of the things that puzzles me is that this point about overfishing, right? And we've had podcast guests actually last week from South Africa who were talking about the very same problems in the University of Cape Town. And one of their points that they kind of alluded to was that overfishing is often the problem because of the industrial fishing companies and not the small scale fishers. To what extent do you agree with that or disagree with that in the context of the area of Philippines that you're working in?
I agree, because for the Philippines, we have this rule that for the municipal waters, which is 15 kilometers, that is only for municipal boats, municipal fishers. But here comes commercial fishers. They have bigger boats. They're using not hand line, so they are using other gears that, get a lot of fish. So to some extent, I really agree to that it's not really the small scale fishers, but also the commercial ones who is also responsible for overfishing. And we have a lot of incidences of IUU, unregulated, unreported fishing. It's because of illegal fishers that are not really registered as fishers. So yeah, it's a combination of a lot of things. And what you said is true. It's also prevalent here in Mindoro.
All this kind of, reminds me of the very first time I actually saw you speak, which is in Jakarta last year, I believe. I was at the back of the room and I heard you say, when fishers earn enough, they can go worrying about survival and have the capacity to practice sustainability. That phrase, Strauss, has stuck with me for the last year and a half. To what extent have you been successful using that yardstick?
Yeah, up until now, it's a constant challenge, Sanjoy, I have to admit, because the price of fish here in the Philippines, it's really a very controversial topic because it's talking about the fishers, what the price that they wanted, the traders also, the price that they dictate as they pass it on to the processors, etc. So it's really controversial, but at the end of the day, our stand is our fishers should benefit from all of these value-adding inputs that is being given to tuna. So at the end of the day, that's what we fight for, and that's what we wanted, that the fishers are economically stable, they're happy, their families are well fed, and they are earning enough so that it will avoid them to get so much fish and have a more stable job and income. So that's what we want for the fishers for the longest time. And it's still a challenge and a battle that we are facing right now.
Mel, I
So,
wanted to follow up by asking you how WWF helps these fishing communities work with local NGOs and other partners, including
mhm.
the Marine Stewardship Council, to get them the certification and so on.
Yeah. So maybe I'll take you back down the memory lane. So we started our work in Mindoro in 2011. It started as a fishery improvement program that is focused on handline caught yellowfin tuna. And this was funded by the several EU retailers for us to go to the next level, which is the Marine Stewardship Council certifications. That project's objective is really to strengthen the position of the small-scale fisheries in securing their livelihoods, to establish a stable supply chain, long-term market access, and promoting responsible fisheries management that would have a more selective and more sustainable tuna product that is available to the environmentally aware consumers in Europe. So that's actually the main objectives of the FIP, Fishery Improvement Program or Project, or FIP, we call it. All of these things are leading towards having this eco-labeling initiative, which is MSC. In 2011, after a series of community outreach, consultations, we were able to form associations for the tuna fishers. So currently we have 6 tuna fishers association. Then we federated them into one. We have the Occidental Mindoro Federation of Tuna Fishers Association. So that's how it really started. So on the MSC part, it's actually the culmination of the decade-long work of WWF in Occidental Mindoro. Basically, the goal is really to have the certification and to also provide partnership between the fishers and the tuna processors. So that's how it started, because MSC is the global standard for measuring the environmental performance of fisheries, wild-caught fisheries that is present in Mindoro Strait. So yeah, that's how it started, and making sure the 3 principles of MSC is being upheld. And it's more of making sure that there are no habitats that are destroyed. Fishing activities should be conducted that would promote population growth, and fisheries should be managed well. So those are the 3 principles of MSC.
And MSC is Marine Stewardship Council. I wonder if I could then follow up by asking you about collaborations with local processor exporters. We found that very interesting as well.
Yeah. So actually, the MSC certification will not be possible if the processors were not part of the MSC client group. The companies that are the processors, so they are considered as an association here. So it's the Philippine Association of Tuna Processors, or we call them PATP, wherein the owner of Jam Seafood, Sam Garcia, is the chairman. PATP represents the country's tuna processors, and together with the Federation of the Fishers in Mindoro Strait and Lagunoy Gulf, they formed the Philippine Tuna Handline Partnership. So they are the MSC client group. They were formally organized in 2019, and they began the full MSC assessment process in 2020. And finally, in October of 2021, we got our first ever MSC certification for yellowfin tuna, and it's the first ever in the Philippines.
Melody, tell us a little bit about how you helped the fishers get the Marine Stewardship Council certification. From where, what did you have to do? For example, did you have to implement traceability standards? Was that difficult? Tell us the story.
Yeah, actually, the fishery improvement program itself, it's the prerequisite for you to apply for the Marine Stewardship Council. The fishery improvement program encompasses all that you have mentioned, Sanjoy. It's part of that is the laws and policies that would govern the management of the fisheries in a specific area. For this case, it's Mindoro. It also involves the traceability. It also involves institutionalizing the fisher folks, and that's what we did, organization and into associations and federation. And we also facilitated the communication between the fishers and the processors. So that's actually the most important thing that happened here. It's that partnership, because if before there is really no communication at all, or if I may say it's strained, it's flawed. But now that they are now in an MSC client group, they are partners now. So the transparency between the two is very evident. And that's what makes this very unique, very special, and very aspirational, I would say.
Mel, I just wanted to follow up a bit about these local processor exporters that you mentioned, like Jam Seafoods, Jala Trading, Nuevo Fresco Marine Corp. What is their motivation for working with the local fishers? What's in it for them?
Yeah, basically, they recognize it's very important that they have this partnership with the fishers, because definitely the fishers are the primary producers of yellowfin tuna. And they also wanted to ensure that the stocks of yellowfin tuna will be there for a long time for the fishers, for the processors. And it's a win-win situation, actually, if you come to see it, that the processors are reaching out also to the fishers in such a way that they will also ensure sustainability of the fish that they are also exporting to the EU and other parts of the world. That's actually how it started. And what's in it for them? Basically, sustainability and longevity of the yellowfin tuna industry. That is what is the driving force behind this partnership and behind MSC.
Dear listeners to our podcast, the one that Jaideep and myself are doing, I want you to hear this podcast with melody and compare it with what you heard last week from Professor Merle Soman and Menke Vincent coming from South Africa. I think in both South Africa and Philippines, both large middle-income countries, if I may say so, one in Asia and the other in Africa, there is an issue of vulnerability among fishing folks. They're poor, they're subject to climate change risks. They're among the most vulnerable people in the context of climate change. The difference from what I'm hearing from this podcast with Melody is that the fishing people here actually produce fish for export. So their methods are far more sustainable. But because they produce fish for export, therefore there is an incentive for local processing companies like Jam Seafoods to engage with them, and for the European Union to help implement standards like the Marine Stewardship Certification that would improve their livelihoods. And so I think that's the opportunity, from what I understand, the WWF has been able to capitalize on and help the fishermen people to organize themselves and improve their livelihoods.
Mel, I wonder if I could ask you now a question about how you intervene to help these tuna fishers develop alternative livelihood options. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, actually, that's also one of the things that we want for fishers. We want them to have diversified income. That's why WWF promotes sustainability by ensuring that our fishers know the basics of financial literacy and other capacity building initiatives. So just to share with you, we have started establishment of group savings and loans committees. And we saw that it showed positive impacts on household incomes. And it also had high participation of women from the handline fishing households. We see that they are now more able to effectively manage their finances by tracking their earnings, expenses, learning to save money, and even earning interest, because in the committees, the GSLCs, they also take loans to be used for their fishing operations, business expansions, and even for personal use. That's why we see that these savings and loans committees are also an alternative way of them to save and earn, and maybe start a business as a group. So that's how we started the alternative livelihoods.
So when you say alternative livelihoods, in the beginning of the podcast, you said this is the farming and fishing community. But these fishing people that you work with, are they also farmers? Just help us understand what is alternative livelihoods.
Well, the fishers are depending on the season, Sanjoy. So fishers can be fishers of tuna if it's in season. They can be fishers of squid if it's in season. If it's not in season, they can do other work. They can do farming, they can do construction, anything that can earn them money, that's what they do. But we also want to empower the women of their households. So we are involving women for two reasons. One, we want them to be the micro enterprises or basically the operators of these alternative livelihoods. And secondly, we want to strengthen their role in actively participating in local fisheries governance. But for the alternative livelihoods part, the goal is to really empower them, to mobilize them to make businesses through value addition and innovation of products coming from other marine species, not just from tuna. Whatever is abundant in the area that is not overfished, so stocks are safe. And we also want to create businesses that support the needs of the fishers, like, for example, ice, the bait, etc. So those are the things that we are envisioning, or when we did the proposal for this project, that's what we want. And we provide technical assistance to these women in terms of their innate entrepreneurial skills and harness whatever strengths that they have for business and entrepreneurship.
I'm very interested in these micro businesses that you've been describing. I'd love to hear more from you about precisely what type of businesses these are and what challenges they face in terms of setting up and then running these businesses. Because from my own experience in other countries, these micro businesses face significant challenges in raising money, and then even in terms of the skills needed to run these businesses. So perhaps you could tell us a bit about these businesses in a bit more detail.
Sure. In our case, we are now venturing into three women's groups. So the first group, they belong in a community where in their area, there's abundance of squid. So we are now helping them in developing a product that is a gourmet bottled squid in oil. Then we are also developing squid powder as a secondary ingredient or flavoring for other food products. So that's the first one. The second one is a group of women who is already doing tuna bottling. So they are using yellowfin tuna and they are bottling it. And what assistance we are giving them right now is market linkage and access to finance. Because I think they have been doing this for like 4 years now. And we want to go to the next level. So they are already good in what they do. The bottling, they have perfected it already. So it's ready now for the next step. But as you know, for food products such as these, it's not just about creating it. So there are a lot of requirements. So that's one of the challenges that we are facing, doing the requirements for the Food and Drug Administration. And also complying to the requirements in terms of having a food processing plant, and among many things, ensuring food safety and quality. Those are the things that is being faced by these micro enterprises. And the last one is another group of women who are engaged in catching and fishing flying fish. So they are doing the drying and salting and also marinating of flying fish. The squid and the flying fish pilot tests are underway. We are just starting to introduce some value addition and basic entrepreneurial skills. And clearly, you're correct in saying that capital financing is very, very challenging for them.
Am I correct that all these businesses you're setting up are run exclusively by women? Curious to know why and how that happened and what the men do out of season, etc.
Yeah, it's not exclusively for women, but majority of them are women. So they are the wives or they are the daughters of these fishers. And off season, the fishers we will be doing different work. So, not fishing. They will be doing farming. They will be doing construction. So these women are actually finding ways to support and to assist their husbands on how to earn more. That's why they're very much welcome to have these alternative livelihoods and to have these types of trainings and ideas, value additions. And we can see really their enthusiasm and their drive to do this because it's potential income. They are willing to try and they're willing to start their business as long as there's support coming from, because for the project, we cannot provide capital funding or seed capital. So what we are doing is more of the technical know-how and providing them with the basic equipment, but that's it. Then we are encouraging them really to have cooperatives or form themselves into cooperatives because that would open their doors for government to support them or have funding.
And do you see any backlash from the men in these communities? Do they feel threatened in some way when the women, are empowered in this way? What is it doing socially and economically? Because I imagine that it certainly increases household income as well.
Not at all. They are very supportive. I am training these women and I saw how they are very enthusiastic and they're always telling us that their husbands are happy that they are engaged in this. So I don't see any problem. In fact, I would see it as a positive result that the women can now provide also or share the income and, support their families even better.
I read that you're helping people buy boats and solar plants for the processing as well. Is that true?
We are assisting them for bankable projects, and that includes the solar ice plants. So part of the project is that we develop bankable projects that would center on cold storage, on ecotourism, and on aquaculture. So for the solar ice plants, it's under the cold storage because that is the need of the province currently, that there is lack of ice. And they get their ice from a nearby province and they have to cross the sea for that to be transported. So there are limited ice plants in Mindoro and there are a lot of fishers that need ice. So we are not providing it, but we are providing the financial model and the organizational structure on how to build that.
And, I'm going to pick up on something Jaideep said earlier. Jaideep and his work has looked at many of these micro enterprises across the world. And obviously, one of the things they always struggle for is finance. There is a skill issue, but I think that skill issue, I'm hearing you explain how you have built that skill issue, but finance. And this sort of brings up a couple of points that I wanted to discuss. One is you did mention about the saving schemes and you did mention about bankable projects. Are the saving schemes linked to the ability of the women to invest in these projects? Are banks interested? Does the community have bank accounts and records? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Oh, yeah. For the savings and loans committees, if they saved enough and as a group, definitely they can really start their own business. Because for the other side, they have around like 2 million already for that has been rolling. And that ran, I think, for 1 to 2 years now. So it's really a big money. So definitely, if they are really serious about this savings and loans committees, they can actually finance their businesses through that. As far as banks are concerned, for the bankable projects, we consider them as big ticket items. So they need big investments. For the micro enterprises, I think you have to do aggregation for them to be financed. But currently, we don't do that. So we are just finding individual or basically private investors that would take interest in them. We are also working with the local governments for any support or funding that they can provide for these communities. So that's how we do it.
Private investors, that perks my interest a little bit. Are they people from the community, relatively rich people? Are they part of the great Filipino diaspora? Who are they?
Yeah, can be. Anybody who wants to finance or fund them, they're very much welcome. It can be from their communities also, because there are some rich families also in Mindoro having vast lands and having a lot of farms. So yeah, it's not really for us. The sky is the limit. Whoever is willing to help these communities, we talk to them. Of course, we also do due diligence, and we also make sure that the communities are amenable to the terms. We are still on the process of introducing potential products, so we are not yet on that level of having financing for these communities.
Mel, can you tell us a little bit about how you're using data technology? It seems like you do quite a lot of that for traceability and using satellites to track and so on. Can you tell us how you do that, who you partner with to do all that?
Yeah, Jaydeep, we have been working on traceability since 2014. So we have that to improve the catch reporting, because it's really part of the sustainability and the fishery improvement project that we had. So these projects would include either a centralized enumerator-based physical catch reporting. So it's mainly manual. So there is a person there that who would record the catch of each MSC certified boat. Then we also have this decentralized electronic data-based monitoring. So in terms of the electronic type or the digitized interventions, we have piloted two different systems. So the first one is a transponder system that is developed by Futuristic Aviation and Maritime Enterprise, or FAME. Then the second one is more of a mobile app called Tracy. So it was developed by TX. The good thing about this is that they provide monetary incentives in exchange for the catch data. WWF thought of a way to combine these two. We had an innovation project called Catch to Cash. The goal of this project is really continue the use of these electronic system while providing monetary incentives. So we use the transponder system, and we also did incentivization. It encourages constant and consistent and accurate catch data reporting. And we see it also as a way to alleviate poverty among the fishers. So that's what we did. Yeah, we are still partnered with FAME for this project, and they are also expanding their work in Indonesia as well.
And these are private companies? Are they private Philippines companies? I mean, Jaideep and myself both work in innovation. So we are really very keen to learn more about this Catch to Cash project that you did.
So yes, they are private companies.
What sort of companies are they? Are they like thinking about the classic startup, certainly the Silicon Valley type, but even in countries like India now we have young people, who are tech savvy, but from the community, are they coming from outside? What are their motives? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so there are actually tech startups. So they are not coming from the community. So they just answer to the needs that is presented to them. And they saw that traceability is a big issue in the Philippines. We are quite data deficient when it comes to these data. These companies are the ones who provide tech support for such needs.
And I'm interested in frugal innovation, not just innovation, but doing things better and cheaper. I imagine there's quite a bit of that going on where they're using these technologies to do things that would not have been possible before and at a fraction of the cost. But can you tell us a little bit about, from WWF's perspective, what's the cost, like what kind of money are you having to spend? Are there strategies you use to reduce the costs and achieve your goals?
Normally, it's actually the processors who shoulder the amount that is being given to these transponder systems that we have. What they aim for is accuracy in data, ensuring that the catch is really monitored, because for MSC, it should really come from MSC certified boats. The processors really invest on these. You have to rent the machine itself, and there's also a subscription fee every month for them to use the application or the software that is embedded in the transponder system. So that's how it works. So it's really mostly the processors who are investing on this.
So there's no cost to the fishers themselves, but they benefit from all this insight and data.
Yes, they do.
I think Jaideep's question is also about the project that you're running, the
Mm.
capacity building, the training, the helping people connect with the processing companies. That costs money. So how are you thinking about continuing the project? Do you need to continue the project? How can you do that more efficiently? And so on.
Yeah, that is really, I think, $1 million questions, Enjoy. And for a project like ours, based on my personal assessment, these needs further intervention. I would say another full cycle project to support the initiatives that we have started, especially on the alternative livelihoods and on providing support for the bankable projects that we have proposed and studied for the area. I would say if I would compare it to my project budget, I think around 2 million euros just to have it a second phase would be for now okay. Without considering, of course, if there will be further inflation that will be happening. But yes, I would say we are on the initiation and incubation period for some of the interventions. I cannot see the fruition of these efforts if this will not continue. So a next phase is really a must. It's not even merely providing monetary or even equipment or capital expenditures. For me, it's really good that we provide our technical expertise every step of the way until such time that they're already self-reliant and they already have the strong will to make these businesses happen for them. So our aim really as a project is to build strong partnership and collaboration as part of our exit strategy. Since currently we don't have the next phase of the project, we are really building strong partnerships with governments, with private sectors, anybody who can really support what we have started here. With that, we build the expertise and then replicate these projects where it is needed the most in our country.
So 2 million euros would allow you to continue working with this community. Just give us a sense of how large is this community, or will you reach out to more people? I mean, the question that is back of my head is, I don't know how many fishing folks are there in Philippines, and I suspect many of them have similar problems, right? And what would it take to solve the small-scale fishers' problems in Philippines?
Wow. Really, for Mindoro alone, there's around 3,500 fishers that is there. And with their households, that would be around 1,000 households covering our area. So I would say 2 million euros would help them jumpstart the business itself. But for other areas, it would really entail government interventions also. If they see Occidental Mindoro as a model, then maybe they can provide also further funding, such as these projects that we have. Bring it to other areas because we have a lot of coastal communities. You are right. We have a lot of that. We are surrounded by bodies of water and we have a lot of marine species that we are catching here. So definitely, Sanjoy, for the 2 million euros, it will really jumpstart the alternative livelihoods for the second phase, and government must be needed for it to be replicated.
Melody, this has been a fascinating conversation. We're going to ask you, do you have any questions for Jaideep and myself?
Yeah. What support will your podcast give for such projects like my project? Apart from the podcast, what are the things that you can actually contribute for us to further up also our initiatives in the Philippines?
Well, Melody, I wish I could say we could provide a lot of support. But what I think we can do, and what we're trying to do, is to help the average business person, the person who works in a bank or in a large retail company or in food companies, understand the problems of food security in these regions in the context of climate change. And what we are trying to do is, with helping them understand, build a community of people who can support projects of this sort. It's not going to happen in one day. And I wish I could say, here's the support we can give. But I think all that I can say is that together we can change mindsets.
Absolutely. I agree. And with that, I'm very thankful. That is really the direction that you would want for us, not only for my project, but also for the other people that you have been talking to and you have been reaching. So thank you very much.
And Melody, if people want to get in touch with you, how should they?
Okay, for WWF Philippines, we have our website. It's wwf.org.ph. And we also have our social media account, WWF Philippines. You can just search it and you will find it. We have on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, on X. And for my email, it's mmellowright@wwf.org.ph.
And we'll have these in our show notes. With that, thank you very much, Melody.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.